Good afternoon, everyone. Nikki Thompson from Council President Mosby's office. Vice President Middleton is absent this afternoon, and we have Councilmember John Bullock residing over this committee meeting in her place. So I'll let him take over at this point, and thank you for your patience.
All right, so good afternoon, folks. It is 2:02 p.m. We're going to get started on our Economic and Community Development Committee. Seeing in attendance, let's see who we have. I see we have Councilmember Dorsey, Councilmember Ramos. I believe we have Councilmember Stokes as well. And then we also have representatives from multiple city agencies. So I do see the Mayor's Office of Government Relations, the Council President's Office represented. Also see representatives from the from Baltimore Development Corporation, Housing and Community Development, and I'm sure we will also have the Department of Planning. I see represented. So again, thank you all for your attendance this afternoon. We do have a couple of bills in front of us today, so do want to get started and be respectful of folks' time. Again, and Councilman Glover is also here, so definitely want to recognize Councilman Glover. So we do have most of our committee here and ready to get started with the agenda that we have ahead of us. So let's go on. We'll go in order. So the first item on our agenda is scheduled for 2 p.m. and that's City Council Bill 210165, South Baltimore Gateway Community Impact District and Management Authority. I know this was introduced by Councilman Costello. I don't see him on the line, but if anybody from his office was here, be fine to have a couple of comments. If not, we will get started. I do see that there are agency reports favorable from the city solicitor, also no opposition from finance. Do want to give an opportunity for any agencies that are here to demonstrate whether there is any changes to their reports or any additional commentary at this point. I don't see anyone from law, and I don't hear any additional comments at this point. Are there any questions from members of the community or anyone supposed to speak on this this issue? Oh, Councilman Costello. I do see Councilman Costello is with us.
Okay.
Yes, Councilman Costello, you're welcome to share some comments, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Is my colleague, is our colleague, Councilwoman Porter on here?
I don't see Councilmember Porter at this moment.
Okay, and this is for the reauthorization of South Baltimore Gateway Partnership?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Appreciate the opportunity. This legislation was introduced by Councilwoman Porter and me. We're the two council districts that cover the catchment area of South Baltimore Gateway Partnership. Mr. Chair, as you may recall, we established this district about 5 years ago after state enabling legislation, and this was a way to put a portion of the casino impact funds directly into the hands of the communities that these funds are intended to positively impact. So I was certainly pleased to introduce this reauthorization on behalf of the partnership. I know that Brad Rogers, the executive director, has put together a very brief slide package of 4 or 5 slides, which he was hoping to have an opportunity to give a brief overview of what the district is doing, and certainly respectfully request my colleagues' favorable consideration of this reauthorization. Happy to answer any questions. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilman Costello. Any questions from members of the committee for Councilman Costello? Doesn't appear there are any, and you said there was a presentation from Brad Rogers. I don't know. I also want to recognize Jennifer Coates, our staff for the committee. Did you get that report, and are we able to pull that up?
Are you speaking of the report?
Yeah. Councilman Costello mentioned there's something from a slide deck from Brad Rogers.
Yes. Here, I'll pull it up for you.
All right, so it looks like we can all see at this point.
There is now a time for me to speak?
Sure, please.
Hello, my name is Brad Rogers. I'm the Executive Director of the South Baltimore Gateway Partnership, and I have a very brief set of 5 slides to show you. The first thing I wanted to make sure you understand is that we take our responsibility very seriously as stewards of public funds. And so we have worked very hard to make sure our funds are managed ethically, responsibly, and professionally. We've had 4 years of clean audits. 100% of our fund balance has been assigned to projects. And we have a board of dedicated and sincere community leaders whose job it is to oversee our spending and make sure that the money is being spent well and being spent competently and being spent in furtherance of community aspirations. As you can see by the graph, which we won't have very much time to look at, we are getting money out the door to get projects done in neighborhoods that desperately need them. Next slide, please. We have 3 different program areas, and I just want to highlight them all very quickly. I'm certainly glad to speak with any council members in more depth about what we do. The first of these is our Enhanced Services Program, which provides capital maintenance and programming for public spaces and recreational activities and parks around the district. We have doubled our spending on trash pickup recently, bringing that to $900,000 over the course of the past 2 fiscal years combined. We have a free sports program called the South Baltimore Gateway Sports Network in low-income parks around the district. We work very closely with our main streets, supporting our economic development agenda, providing cleaner and greener and more lively main streets. We also do major capital projects in partnership with the Parks Department. So we are right now kicking off a $2 million renovation of Carroll Park Rec Center, which has been shuttered for 20 years. And we just cut the ribbon on a Ripken turf field in Cherry Hill that cost $3 million that we did in partnership with the Parks Department and the Ripken Foundation. And that even goes down to small things that need to get done. We mow the grass, we trim the trees, we are working on restoring the gazebo in Riverside Park. Next, we have our community grants. We provide more than $1 million a year. This year, it'll be more like $1.5 million in community grants, ranging in size from large grants of $100,000 all the way down to very small grants of $1,000 to $5,000. I just want to highlight some of what that work does. We support the establishment of new community organizations like the Westport Patriots, which brought sports back to the neighborhood of Westport for the first time in many years. In their first year, and with the support of our funding, they went to the national championships down in Florida. They took a bus down there. Their team came in 4th nationwide, supporting the talent and abilities of young people in Westport. We're supporting streetscaping activities in Pigtown, as well as ongoing support for operating of places like Federal Hill Main Street. We support development projects like the Patapsco Point project developed in Cherry Hill, and we're the ones who funded the consulting work that led to the establishment of Groundwork Kitchen, the work of Paul's Place in Pigtown. Next slide. And then lastly, I just want to round out this whirlwind tour of our activities by telling you about our transformational projects. These are big, dramatic, bold, multi-year, very expensive projects that leverage huge amounts of outside funds to get them done. We've supported the Middle Branch Fitness and Wellness Center, the amazing new $25 million regional recreation complex in Cherry Hill that's about to have its ribbon cut in this summer. We put about $2.5 million into that. We've provided $900,000 to 3 community development corporations so that they would have $300,000 each in operating support to build their capacity, bring in consulting, and generally further their mission. Lastly, we are spearheading, along with the City of Baltimore, the Reimagine Middle Branch project, turning Baltimore's forgotten waterfront into Baltimore's next great waterfront with 11 miles of parks and trails wrapping around from Brooklyn all the way to Port Covington. And as part of that, the Middle Branch Resiliency Initiative is a major green infrastructure program to protect our communities and institutions from flooding. We've raised $15 million so far in outside funding over the course of the past year to protect South Baltimore from flooding. We have another $32 million federal grant that is pending, although actually I just learned yesterday that the first $5 million of that is about to be awarded. And so you should look forward to hearing about that soon. That is a whirlwind tour. I'm glad to talk more at great length to anybody who's interested, but I cede the floor because I know you're a very busy body. Thank you so much.
Well, no, thank you for the presentation. I will say, having been in Carroll Park earlier today, it's great to see that piece. And then I see Councilman Costello wanted to say a couple words.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to also acknowledge our board chair, Jeff Washington, who's done an excellent job over the past few years in terms of steering the board and overseeing the organization. So just wanted to thank him for his service. I know he's on the call. I'm not sure if he has anything to add, but just wanted to make sure he was acknowledged. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And also want to note that Councilman Conway, member of the committee, is also with us. And we talked about agencies reports. I see that finance stands by the report and law also approves for form of legal sufficiency. Are there any additional questions from members of the committee at this point? Okay, not seeing any. Is there any public testimony at this moment?
This is John Perret. May I make a statement?
Please go right ahead.
Sure. John Perret, recent past president of the Riverside Neighborhood Association. I work at the National Federation of the Blind and lived in Baltimore City for 17 years. Worked very closely with the South Baltimore Gateway Partnership, especially on the Middle Branch redevelopment and with activity to help and provide more equipment at the Riverside Pool, one of our many great city pools, and some of the other things that Brad mentioned. I want to compliment them on their outreach to neighborhoods in the impact zone. I know whenever we've asked them, and I know other neighborhoods have said, would you please come to our meeting and talk a little bit about the grants and about what's being done. They've always been willing and able to do so. So I compliment their outreach to the neighborhoods and really think they're doing a great job and appreciate their work and your support.
Thank you so much. Is there anyone else who wants to have comments at this point or testimony?
Kim Lane would like to speak.
Yes, please go right ahead. I think you're on mute, Ms. Lane. It's like you're still muted. So try to work this out. Can we unmute Kim Lane, please?
I'm trying to hold on a second here. Nope, I don't see her. Hold on a minute. Okay, here she is. I'm sorry. Ms. Lane,
Hi,
There you
Hi.
go.
speak.
Kim Lane with Pigtown Main Street, and I just wanted to chime in to say to give our full support. The Gateway Partnership I just want to point out one thing that's unique about them and their funding, is that as a community, you can move and be very flexible as you need to be, because the guidelines are very community focused, right? So in Pigtown, we are working with the community to slow down displacement that we're seeing in the neighborhood because of the level of investment and the market, residential market here. So, most funders, that's not an easy thing to do unless you're kind of a social service based organization. And with the Gateway Partnership, like that's an issue that we can ask for support to resolve or to work on. And I also want to say that the investment for us, I just went through the last couple of years of our budget, is we match the Gateway Partnership money dollar for dollar and sometimes more than that. They funded our beginning of our streetscaping, and then we're matching that dollar for dollar with state funds. And so it really gives you a foundation as a nonprofit to go in and leverage additional funds. And they're just phenomenal also to work with. So I just wanted to give our full support. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional comments, testimony at this point?
Mara James would like to speak.
Yes, please.
This is Mara James. I was just noting that Deputy Mayor Carter is in as an attendee and noted that they'd like to make comments on behalf of the administration. So I wanted to make sure that was seen in the Q&A.
Sure. Thank you very much. Let's try to get Deputy Mayor Carter elevated.
I'm sorry, I don't see Deputy Mayor Carter.
Is anyone, is listed under a different name possibly? I don't see it either.
He's listed under all attendees.
Would that be Ted Carter? Okay, I have it. I have him. I was looking for, okay.
There we go. Okay, thank you very much, Chairman, members of the committee. Good afternoon. Just wanted to, behalf of the administration, offer our support for this bill and its reauthorization in a short period of time. As you've just seen in Mr. Rogers' testimony, have really provided some pretty impressive results. I've had a chance to meet with Mr. Rogers and talk about the future. And a couple of things, Chairman and committee members, I was very impressed with. Besides the body of work that they've developed, they're focused on equity and community input in terms of both the board structure and the development of the vision for their trade area. Mr. Rogers and I have also talked about how to utilize some of their training capability and capacity for the benefit of other CDCs and main streets around the city. It's something that we're having early conversations around. So just this sense of collaboration, focus on South Baltimore and the proximate communities has been impressive. And so we support the reauthorization and look forward to working more closely with Mr. Rogers. And Ethan Cohen is the administration's staff lead for this entity. Scott Davis is a member of the board, and the collaboration with the members of council who are on this board, as well as the board members, has really been something very impressive to see. And I think a model we should, obviously there's not casino funding across the city of this nature, but replicate the structure in terms of how it works with the community. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing on behalf of the administration. Are there any other comments at this point or additional testimony?
Chairman Bullock, there are 31 people in attendance. I don't see any hand raised, but there are a number of callers. Would you like to call them?
Sure, we can go to the callers.
Caller number 3, would you like to testify?
No, thank you. That's me.
Thank you. Caller number 7, would you like to testify? Caller number 7. No response. Caller number 8, would you like to testify?
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Irvin McDaniel, would you like to testify?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Jasmine Kimball, would you like to testify? Jasmine Kimball, would you like to testify?
No.
Someone else is controlling this. Okay, thank you. Nancy Mead, would you like to testify?
No, thank you.
Okay. That does it for callers and for those in attendance.
Okay, and thank you very much. Well, not seeing any additional questions or comments from members of the committee or members of the public, we'll ask if there's a motion to move the bill.
So moved.
Moved by Ramos. Is there a second?
Second.
Is that Dorsey? Second by Dorsey. Moved by Ramos, second by Dorsey. Okay, I think we're ready for a vote. Okay, so Chair Bullock, yes. Member Conway? We'll come back. Member Dorsey?
Yes.
Dorsey's a yes. Member Glover? Member Glover, we'll come back. Member Ramos?
Yes.
It's a yes from Ramos. Member Stokes?
Yes.
It's a yes from Stokes. Okay, so we'll come back. Member Conway. Okay, appears that he might have dropped. No, I see he's still on the call.
I don't see him on.
Okay, and then we'll go Member Glover.
Oh, Mark Conway is, hold on a minute.
Question, if I just need further edification, was how do I pull up again?
I see in the chat, Member Glover says that his vote is yes, and Member Conway, we're voting. Do you have, would you like to chime in? Hold on for 1 second, please.
I've been trying to, excuse me, I apologize, Mr. Chair. I've been trying to chime in this. Councilman Glover, my vote is yes.
Yes, I do have you recorded, Councilman Glover.
Okay.
Thank you so much for both vocalizing it and putting it in the chat. All right.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have a yes from myself, from Dorsey, from Ramos, from Stokes, and from Glover.
Yes, Councilman Bullock.
And a yes from Conway. Okay. So we have all yeses, no opposition at this point. It's like
There are 6 yeses and 1 absence.
All right. So this will move favorably, and this will go on to third reader. Okay. I think we're going to move forward again with our agenda. Again, thank you all for being patient with us today. The next bill that we have in front of us is City Council Bill 210076R, investigative hearing, Baltimore Gas and Electric decision making for the purpose of requesting leadership from the Baltimore Gas and Electric BGE and Department of Transportation to come before the City Council and answer specific questions regarding BGE's planned and emergency work in right-of-way areas, including operations, permitting protocols, communication with neighborhood associations, residents, business owners, and vehicle drivers, and coordination and effective traffic routing with City Council members and Department of Transportation, as well as other relevant agencies. I will say I know many of us feel this very acutely and do want to go straight to our colleague, Councilmember Ramos, to give us some feedback and some words on terms of this bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, colleagues, for indulging this subject today. I do have some folks that will testify. Like all of you, I've experienced some frustrations with the communications with BGE. We're not talking about the bills today, the BGE power bills. We're talking about when they're digging up the streets, digging up the sidewalks for gas and electric, or replacing poles for the electric. And I submitted testimony that outlined specific issues that happened in my district. Particularly, I'll just highlight 1 or 2 where, as you know, we've been dealing with Greenmount Avenue with so much construction. We were about to do the streetscaping that was paid for by the federal government, and just happened to find out because of one of our business owners saw a BGE person on the corner of 32nd and Greenmount, happened to find out that BGE was going to be there because there wasn't any. So we had to stop the streetscaping, wait for them to leave. They're still in the area. So we had asked at that time for a list of all the projects happening in the district. We had an issue with Greenway and 34th Street, where the pole that has been there, that was just put in there, is in the public right of way and on the sidewalk, so it's not ADA accessible. And we also had 29th Street in Huntington, where we had, and the Councilman Stokes got the same emails that I did about this, since we share that area. You know, where there were poles put in a place that wasn't allowed. There were trucks in the alleys blocking the way. There were ADA, the setup didn't allow for people to cross through with ADA compliance on the sidewalks, and night work with no notice. So this is the attempt here is to have a conversation with BGE and with DOT about how we can improve the service. The gas lines and electric are extremely, important for our city. So we want to make sure that they're replaced and all of that, but we need to have it so that it's not such a disruption in our neighborhood. So if you remember, the resolution itself calls for a lot of information from BGE and from DOT to bring to us today, including locations of planned gas and electric work by district, which I do have, and I will share with all of you colleagues, as well as the rest of the council. BGE's plans to avoid ADA violations in the future, protocols and procedures for communications, returning to work sites, because a lot of times we've had sidewalks, messed up and, with the construction, and then BGE doesn't come back until somebody complains. We have these horrible valves that were just put outside of our business areas that I'd like to know more about. The permitting process from the DOT side, because some of this has to be enforced through DOT, and we haven't seen that enforcement, as well as process for coordinating effective traffic management. So we are hoping that we can get to the bottom of some of this today, if not all of it, and have a better way of communicating moving forward with these issues, because getting a monstrous amount of emails and phone calls. Hey, BGE showed up and we didn't know. Now there's something to be said for the emergency work, right? They smell gas, they got to go in. Not an issue. That is very important, and we're not talking about that. We're talking about the planned work that they have planned for the whole year to make sure that we're all on the same page and communities can be informed and be ready. So that's what we're talking about today. And I do appreciate everybody's time in addressing this issue. I do have representatives from BGE here to answer these questions. Also, DOT is here, and I also have testimony. So thank you very much, everyone, for your time. And I'm really looking forward to the discussion. And Mr. Chair, depending on how this goes, we may not vote this out today because we may have to continue the conversation. But at least I really appreciate everybody's time to start the conversation. Thank you.
Well, we'll definitely follow your lead, Councilmember Ramos. And again, it's very timely. I know we all deal with it in our district. So I thank you for elevating this conversation. Also appreciate having folks from DOT and also BGE who are here with us at this point. Again, this is something that we are all dealing with. Again, definitely going to go to any of the agencies. I see that we have our from the law department. It seems favorable. There's some comments, and then we'll go to DOT and then finance. So we'll first go to law.
Mr. Chair, this is Victor Avila. We, of course, stand by our report and are here to answer questions that should have come up in regard to the law as we know with BGE.
Thank you very much. Okay, and now we'll go to Department of Transportation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is Liam Davis with Baltimore City Department of Transportation. Before we get started today, I want to thank each of you, including Councilwoman Ramos, who introduced the resolution, for taking time out of your busy schedules to have this really important conversation. I do want to acknowledge that Director Sharkey was planning to attend, but had an unforeseen scheduling conflict come up. So in addition to myself from DOT, we're joined by our Deputy Director of Complete Streets, Corinne Johnson. We have William Haynes, our Traffic Division Chief, Tim Knight, our Right-of-Way Division Chief, and Adria Turner, who's our Chief of Staff. So with our team here today, I feel like we're fully prepared to address questions and concerns that come up, and anything we can't answer today, you get a commitment from me that we will be following up. We did submit an agency report. I don't see it on Legistar, so I would like, just for the public record, to talk through some of the background and what we're doing at DOT to kind of work through some of these challenges. So as the lead agency tasked with managing and maintaining the city's public right-of-way, DOT plays a critical role in ensuring utilities and contractors are performing work within public right-of-way up to city standards. A lot of times when we think about infrastructure, we think about the things above ground, like traffic signals, street signs, sidewalks, just to name a few. but it's important to remember that a significant amount of critical infrastructure is also subsurface within the city's right-of-way. What am I talking about? So examples include DOT's own conduit network, a 700-mile conduit network that goes across the city, carrying fiber optics and electrical lines. We have DPW's water, sewer, and stormwater lines that go throughout the city, as well as BGE's network of gas lines. Both BG&E and DPW have authority to conduct emergency repairs to subsurface infrastructure, providing the utilities the opportunity to address problems before they become hazardous or contribute to broader service disruptions. In recent years, BGE and DPW have stepped up efforts to modernize their aging subsurface pipes and lines. Combined with those efforts, combined with increasing rates of development across Baltimore, have led to DOT now processing over 10,000 individual street cut permits annually. Those 10,000 permits allow for over 20,000 individual street cuts annually, 20,000 a year, just so people understand the scale of this situation. In response to utility concerns, DOT has taken a number of steps to help mitigate impact to the public. First and foremost, and the council was briefed on this last council luncheon, DOT has updated the agency's street cuts policy. That policy has been posted for public comment, and it is currently up on DOT's website. There is a 30-day public comment period. Depending on the feedback that we get, we anticipate the new policy being finalized sometime during the month of March. The new policy is formatted to APA standards that the City Council put into law in the previous term. It provides a process for backfilling trench repairs, reducing the potential for hazards that may result in injuries and property damage. The new policy will also improve rules to address soil settlement. That's a problem associated often with street cuts, the patch failing. The new policy also strengthens standards for permanent pavement restoration. So instead of a little patch, you're really required now, the contractors are required to resurface that whole lane that's impacted. DOT has updated the agency's street cuts permit itself to further emphasize compliance with the American with Disabilities Act, and requires maintenance of traffic also be considered for sidewalks and bike lanes, so that we're maintaining maintenance of traffic not only for vehicles, but for bikers and pedestrians. DOT's maintenance division and traffic division are developing a curriculum as we speak that will be utilized to train existing staff to become right-of-way inspectors. Those right-of-way inspectors will help increase our capacity as an agency to regulate and inspect street cuts. During calendar year 2021, DOT issued over $900,000 worth of fines for improper street cuts. DOT will continue to participate in monthly utility meetings with both BGE and DPW, and each entity will continue to utilize the Vista portal, where we flag utility conflicts before we do various capital projects. So before we resurface a street, we'll double check in Vista to make sure there's no gas line or water line work. It's not a perfect system, but I can say from experience, I've seen money saved through Vista from us avoiding those utility conflicts. Lastly, DOT holds a separate monthly meeting with BGE leadership where a variety of issues are discussed, including street cuts. Those meetings will also continue. So in conclusion, I want to again thank everybody here today for taking part in this important conversation. DOT looks forward to participating in today's hearing, and we stand by our agency report for City Council Resolution 21-0076R. Thank you, and I'll stand by for any questions and comments.
So really quickly, Liam, thank you for that report. The Vista portal, how long has that been in place? You mentioned, some cost savings there. How long has that been a factor?
And I'm going to defer there to Mr. Tim Knight, our right-of-way chief. Tim, do you know how long we've had Vista up and running?
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone.
The city started in Vista back in 2010. There's been several updates since then, and we've been using it for the street cut permits since 2013.
Thank you, Tim.
Okay, and part of the reason why I ask, and I can see Councilwoman Ramos' face again, just thinking about how effective our system is, and so making sure that we are covering all those bases. And I'm also glad you mentioned DPW. I know DPW has to be also part of this conversation, as is BGE. Other members of the council, any committee members, do you have any questions for DOT as well? I know you did, Councilwoman Ramos. Please go right ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Really appreciate it. Mr. Davis, in the resolution, we have some specific questions that we wanted DOT to answer, and I didn't see those in your bill report. What is your permitting process for planned BGE work and related requirements with the permit? What are the requirements to then have BGE communicate with the residents, follow ADA compliance, and also involve the businesses?
Thank you for that feedback, Councilwoman. And I would just want to stress again, anything that that we may have missed that's not ready for this hearing, you will get something in writing as a follow-up. And that is something that you get that commitment from me. As far as the permitting process, I know that we did update the permit, the street cuts permit. And I know William Haynes and Tim Knight can talk a little bit more about some of those adjustments that have been made and some of the requirements attached to each permit. So Tim or William, do you want to take a stab at talking through the requirements?
Sure, this is Tim again. So once we receive an application for a street cut or any type of utility work, that application is entered into our permit tracking system known as Vista. That once it's entered, the application and the drawings and plans are sent concurrently to several reviewers with DPW and DOT. They include our traffic division, our highway division, our conduit division, street lighting division, and all the DPW utility reviewers. Once we get the necessary approvals, the permit is then issued to the applicant. They give us the starting date and the end date, and at that point that they can go to work. I think BG&E or any of the major utilities, other than a typical gas leak or a small, like just one cut, there probably isn't community notification. But for the larger plan work, I believe that BG&E has outreach to all those communities.
But I thought that it was a requirement of the permit that there would be in this planned work, this is a few months in advance, required outreach to community. And now I'm hearing that that's not the case.
That's not the case on the actual permit, no.
Well, I would want to make a request to DOT to make sure that that gets done. Because sometimes the notifications actually come in the mail and it looks like a bill. So I'd rather have, specific notification requirements as a condition of the permit to be able to make sure that that communication actually happens. And that part of the right-of-way inspection actually has either communicating with the council member or communicating with the community, whether or not they've had proper notice. And secondly, the permit for the street cut and planned work, that does require a traffic mitigation plan.
It requires a traffic control plan.
Sorry, traffic control plan, excuse me.
Yes.
And then
yes, it does. And that is reviewed by our traffic division, to make sure it meets all of our standards.
Okay, and but there hasn't been any interaction with the community at this point to be able to help us, understand where the traffic is going to be and maybe even help with the rerouting. So I would imagine I would want to try to figure out the best way to involve the community. Obviously not in the highways and stuff like that, but depending on the community that's that's a part of is really important to me. And then how do we make sure that the Invista has had some challenges. Again, the whole thing with Greenmount Avenue that I had expressed earlier somehow was not an Invista, and it just happened to be that somebody found out that that was going to happen on Greenmount and 32nd Street. And so, what are going to be moving forward the best way to make sure that we also had another issue where, 1 year, all this amazing streetscape happened on St. Paul Street. And then the following year, BGE ripped it all up. And how do we make sure that that kind of stuff doesn't happen? Now, BGE put it back the way they were supposed to, kinda. And so we want to make sure that those kinds of things don't happen. So do you all have another plan, a way that we can improve the Invista process, or another way that we can make sure that these kinds of things don't happen?
And
I think
or sorry, Tim, go for it.
that's okay. So I think, and I guess it's not necessarily the Invista problem. It's the BG&E and DOT and DPW are responsible for putting their plan work in Invista. So if that plan work is not going on in Vista, it's an issue with the utility and not necessarily in Vista. So definitely, and we also, hopefully between that and our monthly utility coordination meetings, that should not happen.
Right. Thank you, Tim.
I definitely want to again, thank DOT and thank you, Councilman Ramos, for raising these points of communication. I also want to be noted that there are representatives from BGE who are also here, and I'm sure that they may have some comments and some questions maybe for them. So definitely want to have that be lost. But Liam, I want to go back to you. Look, you're about to say something.
Yeah, I was just going to say, to add on to what Tim said, the Invista portal is dependent upon the information being put in. And that's the point. Part of the point of these additional utility coordination meetings is to make sure all those loose ends are tied up, all those T's are crossed, all those I's are dotted. And there's always room for improvement. I'm going to be very transparent about that. But again, going back to the amount of permits being issued annually, 10,000 with 20,000 individual cuts. This is a lot of things being processed. So I too am I'm looking forward to continuing this conversation and receiving this feedback. Councilwoman, I've been taking notes down, and I really liked your idea about the notification requirement as a condition of the permit. So it's something that we can revisit as a team, which is the benefit of these hearings. So thank you.
All right. And again, thank you for the participation. I see Councilman Dorsey, please go right ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First, thank you to our colleague, Councilwoman Ramos, for bringing this up today. I've had a lot of conversations about a lot of this stuff with Liam, Adria, Tim, over the last several months. So I just want to thank all of them for being partners and participants in all this. I do have some questions, some kind of unanswered things from those past conversations, and also some things that I think, again, like just having this hearing might help us move the needle. First of all, there is not a 311 service request type for failed street cut restoration. I have been saying for 5 years, basically, that at the very least, there needs to be a separate service request type for sinkholes that is differentiated from potholes. The average person knows the difference between the two, and they require a different level of investigation and response that is not always forthcoming. I've seen way too many potholes. I've seen way too many sinkholes have asphalt dumped on them only to have it sink immediately after again. I'm not talking about massive sinkholes like we've seen, downtown or whatever. I'm talking about, small things that are, a couple feet deep and, where there's clear subsurface erosion. So that's one. But there also really needs to be a service request type for other general indicators of substandard street cut restoration. It happens all the time, all over the city. And as evidenced by the numbers that have been given, that we do not have a good record of addressing it. It's heartening to hear that we are pipelining people into right-of-way inspections, but the number we were given here, 20,000 street cuts a year. In 2021, there were 54 citations issued for street cut violations. That's a rate of 0.2% failure. Who here, by a show of hands, thinks that that's an accurate representation of the quality of work that's happening on the whole? Not me. So I think that there needs to be a 311 because I can tell you I've similarly had trouble saying, look, there is obviously a substandard repair that took place here, and I can name places off the top of my head still today that 6 months after I brought it up to people's attention, and there being no 311 service request to tie it to because no such service request type exists. I have no idea what the outcome is of me having brought it to anybody's attention.
Councilman Dorsey, thank you for raising that. I think it's a valid point. Any response to Councilman Dorsey's question?
I think the points he brings up are valid, and I've taken notes, and we will have a post-mortem as a team, and we will be following up. Thank you, Councilman.
Well, thank you. And I'll just say, we oftentimes ask constituents, residents to call 311, and there's a lot of frustration when, again, there may not be that piece there. So I'm glad that you mentioned that, Councilman Dorsey, as well. Also, let's see, there are some attendees who want to speak.
Oh, I've got more, Mr. Chair.
Oh, okay. Well, second question to Councilman Dorsey, and then I also want to make sure we get our attendees to ask their question, and also have representatives from BGE also speak. But go ahead, Councilman Dorsey.
Thanks. Before I go on to my second question, I want to just highlight a couple spots real quick, and preface it by saying not to step on my colleagues' toes, but when you are as far away from the center of the city and travel through the center of the city as much as I have to in order to get to anywhere else in the city, you travel through other people's districts quite often. And so there have been a couple of locations on 33rd Street where DOT has done some, has either done or held somebody accountable to do some level of repair to substandard work. Just in recent weeks, things that I had been in discussion with them about. But there is still the other one that I've discussed with DOT, which is at the corner of, it's the northwest corner of 33rd and Lock Raven on 33rd, where sometime within the last year or two, one of the small cell antenna folks that have been doing lots and lots of installations around around town did some street work, and anybody that passes by there would see plain as day that they did substandard street cut work, and it's collapsing on the road, and it's been months since I brought it up, and I haven't seen any change, and I have no idea if anything has happened to address that. So I'm just bringing that up now. I don't need any response on that right now. I'm just putting that out here very publicly. That needs to be addressed.
Councilman Dorsey, before you go on, just
Yeah.
want to note that we do have representatives from DPW with us, and also CHAP. So I want to make sure that those folks got recognized too. Go right ahead, Councilman Dorsey.
Thank you. In talking about increasing the number of street cut inspectors, I understand that there are street cut inspectors in more than one division, not just in right-of-way division, but as well, and I may be mistaken about this, whether we categorize them as street cut inspectors or right-of-way inspectors. We have some folks who fall into the same category in both right-of-way division and maintenance division. I'd like to get an understanding of how many we have in both or in each, and what the delineation of their roles is as with respect to street cut work.
This is Tim again. So the right-of-way division has one inspector. One, and that inspector does not inspect street cuts. He inspects minor privileges and permitting for dumpster, the regulation of the dumpsters and scaffoldings and those type of things in the right of way. The other street cut inspectors are in the maintenance division, and I'm not sure. I think it's 5, but I'm not positive on that number.
And just on a follow-up to that, is the reason that we have 1 and 5 because we have vacancies that are, funded positions that are vacant, or because we do not have the positions funded? Because either way, this seems insane.
And I can speak for the right-of-way division, and there are no vacant inspector positions.
Okay. Duly noted. Do we have any comment on that for maintenance division?
We can follow up with you, Councilman. I
Yes,
had that
please.
writing that down too.
These are woefully inadequate numbers, as far as I can tell.
I'll just say, Councilman Dorsey, I appreciate you raising the point because you're talking about capacity as well to address this urgent issue. So again, thank you for raising that. Any additional questions or comments from you, Councilman
I
Dorsey?
have one quick question, might be quick question, Mr. Chair. Just as I had forgotten to ask this earlier, my understanding is that there's a difference between an emergency permit, you got to get in there, there's a smell of gas, you got to get in there. Got it. We totally understand that. And like the regular work. Is there a permit that BGE has that they can just do emergency work for whenever that happens? And do we find sometimes that they're using that emergency permit to be able to do planned work?
Tim, I think you're a little bit more knowledgeable on this one.
Yes, BG&E has a blanket permit for emergency work. It's very specifically defined what can be done under that permit. So they are not allowed to do any planned work under that. It's strictly emergencies. And again, I can send you a copy of that. It's quite long, but it's very defined of what they can do.
And if for some reason we felt like, they were violating that, what's the way to report that to you directly?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for raising that. Councilman Dorsey, do you have any follow-up questions, or are you?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. One final question. I have on numerous occasions requested copies of developers' agreements. I have never, I don't believe, ever received one that I have requested. So does DOT know who is the custodian of record for developers' agreements that pertain to that include street cuts, or to whom should I address such questions? Is it reasonable that I should be able to get them, and what is a reasonable time frame to be able to request a copy of a developer's agreement and actually get it?
So yeah, this is Tim. Developers agreements are under the right-of-way division. Any copy you want, I'd be glad to get it to you as soon as possible. Every developer's agreement has to go to the Board of Estimates, so they're also in their possession. But any one you want, I can get to you quickly.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And thank you for raising that issue. We want to get to community testimony, but I know there are representatives from BGE, so maybe we can have one of your representatives say a few words if you are ready at this moment.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great. Good afternoon. My name is Fabiola Donato Galindo, and I'm an External Affairs Manager for Baltimore Gas and Electric. Dear members of the Economic and Community Development Committee, I thank you very much for the opportunity to appear before this committee today to discuss the topic of BGE's plan and emergent work and how we ensure the continued delivery of safe and reliable natural gas and electric service to our customers in Baltimore City, and how we can strengthen our partnership to make this process better for our customers and our communities. BGE has the responsibility of upgrading and maintaining our gas and electric systems to ensure we provide our customers with the safe and reliable service that they expect and deserve. Oftentimes, our work is planned. This work may involve modernizing aging infrastructure or addressing issues on our systems. This work is driven by the subject of extensive regulatory requirements and commitments. These include natural gas modernization initiatives like our Stripe and Operation Pipeline programs, which is replacing thousands of miles of cast iron and bare steel pipes. The pipe replacement have led to the reduction in emissions of more than 1 million pounds of methane, a major greenhouse gas pollutant. Now, other times we're dealing with emergent issues such as power outages and gas leaks. And the priority on those is to stabilize the situation to ensure the safety and well-being of our customers and the public while making sure the gas continues to flow and the lights stay on. We understand that although this work is vitally important, it can be very frustrating to customers, especially when it involves construction that impacts traffic patterns, causes noise, or interrupts daily routine. This can especially be frustrating on those instances where customers feel they have not been adequately or fully informed of the extent or duration of the work being performed. Accordingly, I like to spend a few minutes detailing our approach to work in the city and the steps that we can identify opportunities for improvement. In terms of arranging work, our internal operation teams identify projects based on a variety of factors, including but not limited to the age of the infrastructure, past and present asset performance, and the availability of necessary resources and materials. At the point when we are in the planning and design is complete and it's time to execute the work, BGE works to provide advance notification via letters to impacted customers, and our external affairs team works to notify elected officials of projects that will impact their constituents. Although we attempt to be as thorough as possible in making sure these steps are completed, we acknowledge that there have been instances in the past where we could have done a better job of communicating, and we recognize that there is an opportunity to provide more comprehensive communications to customers affected by BGE operations work in their neighborhoods. We are aware of this opportunity, and we are actively working toward solutions. As part of our efforts to enhance processes, we are in continuous conversations with the Department of Transportation to discuss and coordinate our active work projects in the city and to address any existing and potential issues. And I can assure the council that BGE values this partnership with DOT, and we are committed to continue it and work with DOT to identify strategies that will enhance our coordination efforts. BGE's work portfolio is necessarily robust, given our responsibility to provide safe and reliable service. Since 2014, we have invested about $11.8 billion in enhancing operations and maintenance of both our gas and electric system that is serving our customers. Along with that work comes the obligation of keeping our customers and stakeholders informed and engaged. We recognize the importance of the service we provide to our customers and communities, and we're committed to ensuring that our system operates in a manner that continues to serve customers' needs. Finally, we are committed to look for opportunities and better ways to meet our work challenges while simultaneously enhancing the overall customer experience. Maintaining a safe and reliable utility system and ensuring good customer service and community relations are not mutually exclusive propositions. Rather, they are complementary goals worth achieving. BGE is looking forward to having that conversation today. Thank you again for your time and attention in this afternoon, and my colleagues who are here with me as well are available to take any questions that the council members may have.
So thank you, Fabiola. I'm sure there are a number of questions from our colleagues. I do have one question as we kick things off. One of the things that's been a constant theme today has been communication. Again, the need for having timely and active and accurate information. But one question I have is around the work of any contractors on existing projects. Can you talk about how that may affect this level of communication?
Well, in terms of plan work, okay, in terms of plan work, we have several jobs that we have planned, and I have with me my colleague Holly Lash, who manages a lot of our projects that are, like I mentioned, STRIDE, which are gas modernization projects, Baltimore Operation Pipeline, which is gas main replacement projects. And they have a system to communicate that this plan work is coming to somebody's neighborhood. And so there's letters that get sent out weeks in advance. There are other letters that get sent out close to the point where the construction is to start, because we realize people may forget that we have sent something earlier. But we know that letters are not the end all be all, and we understand that. We have acknowledged and we have recognized, and we're working towards solutions that can be project focused, that we can have customers opt in into the system to get notifications via other methods, which includes digital communication. But it's important to know and to note that our customers need to opt into those services. We can't just automatically enroll everybody to receive text notifications or alerts in their phones. They need to be able to opt in. So we have those capabilities, but we're working towards a solution that can be identified for those project specifics. And in terms of, it depends on several works. We try to use Nextdoor if there's an opportunity to use Nextdoor to notify customer if there's like an emergent work, and we're able to triangulate what area of the city we're impacting and sending those notices out. We'll take advantage of that as well.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned emergency work. I know oftentimes that winds up being one of the challenges in terms of not only what happens in terms of traffic patterns, but also the time of day in which the work is being done, and then also the quality of work as well, as was mentioned by our colleagues. So I know they'll have additional questions, but I think I've asked mine. Members of the committee, do you have it? I'm sure you do, but what questions do you have for BG? I'll go to the resolution sponsor first, to Councilman Ramos, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you, Ms. Donato Galindo. I mean, you've obviously heard from all of us. We certainly know, I mean, you do your best to try to communicate with all the parties, and I do appreciate it. When you get a chance, I would like written responses to what I have here in the hearing resolution. We had asked very specific questions about well, first of all, you did give us the list, and I just sent it out to the rest of the my colleagues here for the planned work. But you know, the BGE's plans to avoid ADA violations. The issue on Huntington Avenue was all about the ADA violations. And I even got an email from one of your colleagues saying, oh, we're just now training our contractors on how to avoid ADA violations. And the ADA has been established for the last 30 years. So we need to know how that BGE is going to address that in the future. And then, you know, you're further, so I just don't have any of the answers to this resolution, or we're not in your presentation, and we need these in writing or come back to another hearing to go through all of these things that we've asked. But you can answer the ADA one right now. Thank you.
I appreciate your comments, Councilwoman Ramos. We are committed to following any laws, any regulations that exist. We are willing to work with our partners to ensure compliance with all applicable laws. We appreciate the seriousness of these issues and are looking into those allegations or deficiencies regarding construction contractors and ADA compliance. We have also going to set up a site visit with our colleagues from DOT to review those setups and ensure that our contractors are doing the proper traffic setups and ensure ADA compliance.
So if I heard you correctly, you're going to be, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead, Ms. Bradshaw Lee.
Good afternoon, everyone. Councilwoman, if I could just address that one specifically for you. We are working diligently with our contractors, and you are absolutely right. ADA has been in play for several moments. It's the actual traffic setup that keeps us in compliance with it that has been the issue lately. So we are working diligently with all of our contractors as well as DOT to make sure that we all have the correct traffic plans for when working within an ADA compliant area. I know the one specifically that you're talking of, I don't know that that is a BGE job that we're specifically related to, but we absolutely want to work with our contractors and DOT to make sure that we all have the way to move forward with ADA compliance. It's not an option for us.
Thank you. And I would hope that the right-of-way inspectors that DOT just talked about as well would be addressing that. My second question before yielding is we do have this issue of BGE. We have this issue with DPW, but we're going to address that separately with sidewalks. Once BGE does work in an area, whether it's on a light pole or whether it's in the ground, and then coming back to make sure that it's taken care of and it's not just a lump of asphalt. I don't know if it's like 120 days or whatever, but too many times my colleague from the 3rd and I have had to go through because of a neighborhood that we share has had this issue where they never got, after a year, the BGE to fix the sidewalks. So what is the process that you're going to start using to be able to come back and fix the sidewalks after you're doing this work?
Again, ma'am, so the sidewalk issues, if it is a light pole, the sidewalk repair goes back to Baltimore City for their repair. If it is a street cut on the sidewalk based off a gas or electric issue, it is BGE's to handle. So we will absolutely be back to make sure that that area, and we have 6 inspectors going back out to check our work is done within our compliance guidelines.
But it took a year to get you all. So that's the issue.
Again, I don't absolutely want to point fingers on that one. That was not a BGE repair to be made. If it is a street light issue, we may have made the repair on the street light. The paving on the sidewalk goes back to DOT.
This was definitely it had BGE on the sidewalk. So this is in Mayfield. But what I'm trying to get at is, how do we know that you're going to speed up that process?
Okay, yeah, well, our commitment is to absolutely speed up our process. We have put significant strides to have our paving, our entire area revamped. We have 6 inspectors out doing our work. We have several contractors on our system. We make sure that we get out there. We're running at about an average of 60 days. Of course, right now, everything is going to be longer. We can't pave when it's under 40 degrees. We can't pave, there's those restrictions that happen right now. But I think we're running at about a 60-day turnaround time for those. We're not perfect, absolutely not, but we are committed to improvement and process improvement on it. I can only apologize for that issue. You're right, it should not have taken a year to get it rectified. But we do have a process in place to immediately address any of our sidewalk and street cut paving issues.
Thank you. I'll yield for my other colleagues and then come back.
Okay, other members with questions? I see Councilman Dorsey's hand up.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. First, just to maybe get some final clarification on that last conversation there. Because I want to make sure there's not any confusion here. It's my understanding that BGE has to spray, paint, mark BGE on any cut they make, even ones that they are not responsible to repair. Am I correct in that? That is the case. Good. That is what I understood. That there are, and I think they're just, it's my understanding that any cut on a sidewalk that is related to a street light, any electrical cut is not BGE's to repair. Are there any circumstances under which BGE is responsible to do the sidewalk repair related to street to street lighting?
Not related to street lighting, sir.
Okay.
We would only be initiating the repair related to a gas or electric outside of the street lighting.
Okay, then
Underground
clarify
conduit.
that for me. Gas and electric outside of the street.
Underground conduit not related to the street lighting.
All right, so gas or conduit.
Correct.
Okay. I've made that. I made a really big deal out of some sidewalk cuts that were paint and sprayed BGE a couple of years ago, only to learn that it was on DOT. And I'll say that DOT did rectify that one very quickly. Many thanks to Mr. Brent Hooper, who is no longer with the department.
Councilman Dorsey, if you don't mind, I just want to say that was a great teaching moment, I think, for folks not only on the council, but folks in the listening public to recognize what that distinction is. So thank you for going through that. Please continue.
You are welcome. I really got hot-headed before I learned that, and so I'm not going to forget that lesson myself. Because I do say embarrassing things sometimes. And you never forget them. Okay, so now that that's cleared up, I just want to understand the extent to which BGE, outside of specific project crews and their direct supervision, what is BGE doing to monitor its own broad scope of work, the quality of work, street cuts? And with that, is there anything that BGE is reporting to the city on a cut-by-cut basis? I know, for example, there are other kind of tangential kind of entities, like where if a tower tows a car, even from a private lot under a private contract in the city, that tower has to report that tow through the 311 system, just in case some person goes, I think somebody stole my car. Did my car get stolen? No, I can call and look this up. Is there any system where BGE is reporting individual street cuts to the city, initiating a time-stamped kind of tracking system from the time that a cut is made? And then is BGE monitoring and supervising its own street cut restorations to ensure that they are up to the city's standards outside of the individual project supervisors?
The short answer is yes. And just to expound upon that a little bit, we report street cuts daily to the city.
Okay.
So we also have a full paving and restoration unit that goes out and inspects the work for finalization of each one, that to make sure that our paving, our compaction is within limits, that we expect our contractors and our own crews for work to make sure that it is up to satisfaction from within the DOT guidelines.
And how are those street cuts reported on a daily basis?
The right-of-way.permit, there's an email address that and I'm gonna have to lean on a colleague for the correct, it's right-of-way.permit Baltimore City, right-of-way.permit@baltimorecity.gov. We report daily too.
Okay, and is each cut then assigned a number or a record number or something like that?
I don't believe it's actually assigned a number. There is also a monthly report that goes back and contacts each one of the cuts that was done at the end of the month, but I don't know that it's actually assigned a report, but I defer to my colleagues at DOT as to what happens on the back end after we send that in.
Yeah, I can answer that if you like.
Please.
So with each permit that involves a street cut, there's also a street cut notification form. That form needs to be filled out and sent to the street cut inspection group. And that's the trigger date for the inspection for that cut.
Okay, interesting. But Mr. Chair, I'm just thinking about some of what I've observed in certain experiences, and I'm struggling to put together like a thread of where there seems to be some sort of breakdown in the system, or how it comes back to the similar experience that I relate about the failing street cut over at 33rd and Loch Raven. There are others like that where sometime after the fact, likely after an inspection occurred, evidence of a failure begins to appear. And it's a struggle to get them then re-inspected in a timely manner. And even in cases where they are re-inspected after some communication takes place, I'm not sure that the correct rectification occurs. For example, in the block of Harford Avenue, just south or Asquith, just south of Preston Street, there was a series of conduit repair cuts made in that block maybe 3 years ago. Within 6 months, all three of them were sinking 3, 4, 5 inches deep. It took months and months and months to get any of them looked at again. And some of them that were paved over, that were fixed, are sinking again. And it's evidence that even when they were fixed, the subsurface work that should have been done in the first place wasn't done the second time around either. And so I'm trying to figure out what's missing in our system that the subsurface work so often is substandard and doesn't meet muster, and but that we don't learn about it until long after, or some significant time after the initial inspection has occurred.
Councilman Dorsey, I think I get your question. Any response to Councilman Dorsey's question?
This is Liam from DOT. I will say that that was part of our testimony, is the new street cuts policy further specifies standards related to the patches, including how you know, I'm not an expert in this, but how you put the dirt in and pack it so that it doesn't fail. So Councilman, we could even, if you'd like, have Valerie LaCour, who worked very closely on drafting that new street cuts policy. She can further explain that, and we can get you that information.
Liam, I can add a little bit more to that as well. So like you said, that is part of the reason why we had the change in the policy. So historically, pretty much the trench where the cut existed, then that was the area that they would backfill. And unfortunately, when you're working within a narrow space and you're putting in the different layers, if you don't get that compaction right, it's going to fail. And so where you might see where there's been some paving and then it continues to sink, typically that's an issue with the compaction rate of the subsurface under the roadway. And so DOT recognizes those issues. And that's why now we've expanded and said, you know what, you can't just do the little trench where you cut. We need a fuller restoration, because we're seeing when it's a wire section, you can get better quality of the pavement surfaces. And then it provides that smooth surface for that entire lane. And you're not creating additional cracks where the cars are traveling, and we see the failures and things like that over time. And so that's the one piece with that. As far as the inspection, yes, we have ability to track and see when work was completed and when it should be done, and kind of to monitor those patches. Obviously, like we noted, we do have a very small number of inspectors, but they are out there actively working. And so because this has become such a big concern of ours, one change that started occurring is that the inspectors, when they are inspecting and issuing fines, they are copying senior leadership. So I get copied on those emails. I'm not sure if the director does or not, but they specify each individual fine, how much was assessed, and then there's pictures to document it as well, and who's responsible for it. So whether it's BGE or even DBW or any other private other entity that's out there doing work, they're being much more diligent on identifying, tracking, and issuing those fines. So we are making some headway in the right direction. But if you would like some additional explanation, like Liam mentioned, we can get that for you.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So, I mean, there are some things that you're talking about that aren't new, right? I mean, I have in my inbox, and I've pulled from the Book of Standards probably 2 years ago, some of these standards that really do cover a much more extensive thing, 10 feet on either side of a lateral cut, a full lane width on a linear cut on a street. That's stuff that's actually been in place for quite some time. And where we've seen, look, to their credit, I think BGE has actually done a very good job in, my whole neighborhood, Mayfield, much of the neighborhood had gas line replacements last year, and they did an excellent job in upholding all of our standards in restoration in that project. But there still, I guess for me, the big concern is what happens after we've done what has been our basic level of inspections. It's that time after. It's the 6 months later, the 1 year later, when things shouldn't be failing, but it wasn't evidenced that it was done improperly when we inspected 1 month after the work was done. That's where it seems we have a significant breakdown on our end. That's what's on my mind, Mr. Chair.
Councilman Dorsey, I really do thank you for the thorough comments, and again, this is a significant issue, so I'm glad that you have really brought that to light along with Councilman Ramos. Are there any other members of the committee who have questions? I see Councilman Glover. Please go right ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, colleagues, and invited guests. My question is, how does street cuts affect the damages of other services that may be in our community, such as cable, water, electricity? Who's are responsible to our constituents for making sure that 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 information gets out to them in reference to those services getting cut off? Excuse me, getting cut off, or may have gotten cut off already, because I don't think DOT is getting it, because we're not getting it. And what we're doing is we're getting calls from our constituents asking us, like, why haven't we in the council office been able to notify them in advance of exactly when BG&E was coming, through the repair, work. And also when sometimes they come through to repair those jobs, that other things happen, such as, like I said, the cutting of cables and things of that nature. Who exactly do you guys send that information to? And if it's DOT, are you guys sending it out to the council people? I just had sent an email recently to Liam Davis in reference to one of my constituents of some lighting that was out in the 23 and 2400 block of East Preston Street. And I was getting calls from the store owners that they had to close down early because of we had, some high concentrated crime up in that area, recently. Let alone people are afraid to walk through those streets. And we hear it because it was a cable that was cut. So I'm asking who's going to communicate that to DOT or to us from BG&E. That is really my question. I was told, I just want to be clear, I sent an email out to Miss Fabiola just recently, asking was it still on the 31st the job will be completed. I have yet to receive an email in return. I know you guys are busy and I know you guys are doing great work, but again, the constituent doesn't understand that. So I want to be able to communicate to my constituent. If I was told that on the 31st the project will be completed, if I was told from BG&E that they're waiting on DOT to get the lighting up, and DOT doesn't even realize that there's a lighting issue until word brought until we're bringing it to their attention, then the communication between the agencies are like not working. So what I'm asking is that how can you guys provide information not only to DOT, but can you guys CC those community, uh, excuse me, not the community, but can you guys CC our colleagues on the council so that we know as well if we're not getting this information at the tail end prior to us going to a community association meeting and our hands are put up and saying we just don't know. We need to know something.
I can address that, Councilman Glover. That's a very valid point. And I apologize if I haven't not gotten back to you. I'll make sure I get back to you as soon as this hearing is over. I will be your point of contact and I'm making that commitment. So if something is happening in your district, some sort of emergency, whether like you mentioned, a cable or service got cut out, I'll make sure that you're notified along with the same commitment that I'm making with other council persons here and my colleague Danielle Gooden, who serves the Western District. We're both willing to make that commitment to keep you informed. Absolutely.
All right, I appreciate it. I mean, like I said, I think you guys are doing some great work, but I think it falls down to the communication piece where the work has gotten done. We had gas lines that were replaced by DPW in the Berea community, and once those that work was done, replacing of the water lines in that community, the community just wasn't notified exactly of the other issues. Because what we'll say is that, hey, it's going to be done on XYZ, date. It's gotten paved, but behind that, there are other issues that they just don't know about. These folks want to come back and park, on their streets where they live, as opposed to parking sometimes on the primary streets where they can't see their vehicles. So I think we all have to do a better job at communicating, especially with the council, because we're where the rubber meets the road. They're calling us, continuously asking, what are the issues? What are the problems? What is going to get resolved? What is going to get fixed? We really have no answer at times for them, unless transportation have those answers, and sometimes they just don't. So again, I ask that you guys, in BG&E, please just do a better job at when you send that information out to DOT or your contracts, your partners, whatever, that you make sure that my colleagues, including myself, have that information at our disposal so we can give out to our constituents that we represent. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank
No,
you for answering my
Thank-
question.
Thank you, Councilman Glover, for raising a collective concern and giving voice to that. Look like Liam, you're going to say something?
Yeah, I wanted to acknowledge what Councilman Glover was saying, and I will say this, Councilman, I did talk to Jamal Simpson, so I believe I'm aware of the situation you're talking about, and we were actually attempting to get some temporary lighting over there, but the feedback I got from Maintenance Division at the time was it was being used for the investigation of the deadly fire. So we can double check to see if any of that capacity has opened up, and if the lights still are out, we can totally.
To be honest with you, Liam, sorry to cut you off. The lights aren't there. I mean, the replacement of the lights from BG&E isn't working right now, but the lights that we asked you guys to bring to Preston Street, they're there. They were there the next day.
Oh,
It's
okay,
just,
wow.
yeah, so they were there. But again, and the only reason why I know they were there is because me frequenting the community, I said, okay, damn, the lights are here. And I'm able to now tell the constituents, you know what? The lights are up now. So they're excited about that for the moment. But then we're told on BG&E side that on the 31st of January, it will be completed. So what I'm saying is that I wouldn't know if it's completed unless I went down there personally today to see if that job on the 31st was completed on yesterday. So it's just a lack of communication, and I think it's something small that we could really work out if that we had BG&E also when they email you guys to also CC those respective council persons in those respective districts. But the lighting is up, Liam, and I thank you for that.
Thank you,
And
Councilman.
another thing, Councilman Glover, that I can send your way. We do have a comprehensive streetlight outage map where you can actually go report a streetlight outage, and it will give you notification. You can send you text alerts or notifications via email about the repairs of a light. So that's, I just want to make sure that you're aware that that's another tool that we use to communicate about streetlight outages.
Thank you very much. Any other questions from members of the committee before we go to public testimony? Okay, so at this point, do want to open for public testimony. We'll see if we have anybody who is dialed in at this point.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me
I have
okay?
a number of people who are on, so we want to encourage them to raise their hands if they can use the raise hand
Hello?
function. That'd be great. But I do have a number of people on.
I do hear one voice.
Not sure if you guys can hear me. This is ML Moon.
Okay, please go right ahead.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for allowing me to speak on this issue, and thank you for adding this to your agenda. I'm a transplant to Baltimore. Actually today is my 2-year anniversary. I moved here from Connecticut, and I can tell you in the area where I live on St. Paul, I would invite you guys to come out and just drive down St. Paul from maybe 25th down to the Amtrak station, or go up Charles from the Amtrak station back up to 25th. And this is a major problem with BGE. They're doing work in this area right now. It's been going on for the last 4, maybe 5 months. And they have destroyed the streets in this neighborhood. And as far as I'm concerned, as a resident here, I don't think BGE has any respect at all for this neighborhood and the people who live here. They come out, they disrupt traffic. There have been days where I can't get out of the alley where I park because they have BGE vehicles blocking the alley. There's just absolutely no regard at all for the people who live in this community. And I guess maybe they don't have to drive on these streets. Maybe they don't live here, so they just come over and tear it up and then go home. And then we have to be left to pick up the pieces and repair vehicles and all the other stuff that comes along with it. But I just want to stress to you guys as leaders, the council members, the significant headache and problem that this is causing. Right now, there are, as the Councilman Dorsey remarked about, there are what I call sinkholes, because they come out and tear it up, cut it up, and then they do a horrible job repatching. And then within days, you have these areas that they've repatched sinking again. And so if you drive along these streets that I just mentioned, you have the problem with sinking holes, or in some areas where they've cut and just haven't repaired at all, particularly along Charles, up in the 24th Street area. There are multiple locations along Charles where they've cut and just left it. You know, I mean, I don't know what's going on there. There's no notification as to we're working on it, we're coming back to fix it. It's just cut and left. And you're left as a resident trying to figure out, well, what in the heck, you know, what do we do? Who do we call? It's just very unclear. In 2 sections on St. Paul, right in front of my building, they had to cut the sidewalk. And you would think they would have repaved that with cement, like the sidewalk was initially built, but instead they used asphalt. And, you know, if you try to drive a wheelchair over it, you know, it's like the road now. It's bumpy, it's uneven, because it wasn't repaired with cement. So you have half the sidewalk with cement, the other half with asphalt that is uneven and bumpy, and you figure it out. If you're trying to roll a electric wheelchair up the street, God forbid, you probably get dumped out of it. So I don't want to repeat myself. I know other people want to talk, but I do want you guys to take into consideration how big of an issue this is. I don't see any oversight at all from DOT. I don't see any DOT folks coming out to inspect the work to make sure that they've done a decent job. I don't see any kind of follow-up. It's kind of like a free-for-all. So I really want to see DOT become more involved in this process to, 1, make sure they're repairing the roads like they're supposed to, and then 2, when they don't do it, to follow up with some kind of enforcement action, whether it be a fine or whatever is called for. But I cannot stress enough, as a person who lives here, BGE has created a huge headache for me as a resident. And I just wish that there is something that you guys can do as council members to make them fix what they break, fix the roads back like they were, and you know, don't tear it up and leave it, because you know, those of us who live here, we don't want that in our neighborhood. I certainly don't, and I'm sure the other people don't as well. So thank you again, Councilwoman Ramos, if I'm saying your name correctly, for bringing this issue to the agenda. And I will be expecting that you guys will be able to do something to bring this matter under control.
Well, thank you for your testimony. We definitely understand your frustration, especially as it comes to ADA issues. So, point well taken. In addition to ML Boone, I see a Fong Lee as well. So please go right ahead if you're able to. And if not, we'll just keep going down the list of callers.
Hold on 1 second. I'm gonna unmute Fong Lee. Fong Lee?
Hi, can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Hi, thank you. My name is Fong Lee. I'm the president of the Greater Edmonton Improvement Association. I've worked closely with Councilman Ramos and Councilman Stokes on this issue, so thank you to you both. Thank you, Councilman Bullock, for this meeting, and thank you to BGE and DOT as well. I know we've all worked very closely together on these issues, so I wanted to give some experience from the neighborhood level, some of what my neighbors have contacted me and I've talked with them about. The last speaker's concerns about the sidewalks and ADA accessibility, that's something we've experienced. Blocking alleys, which in addition to being a nuisance and inconvenient, is prevents emergency vehicles from accessing the rear of buildings. We've also experienced that as well. So I think the two big things are that excess ADA issues and the communication. So here's at least one example from a neighbor who lives off of 24th Street. They contacted me as their power went out and asked me, hey, was this a scheduled outage? I said, I don't know. And then a few minutes later, they got a knock on their door and apparently the subcontractor said, yeah, sorry, we have to turn off your power. And as if that was a reasonable prior notification, like as they were doing it. And we learned later that they just didn't know that they were supposed to inform people when they turned off the power. And that was one of the issues. Right around the block on Fawcett Street, a neighbor contacted me at 10 p.m. at night and said, hey, there's jackhammering going on behind my house. Do you know if something's going on? And apparently it was a planned maintenance at 10 p.m. at night with jackhammers, and they weren't notified. And but this is the sort of kind of experience that we've come to expect from BGE. I said, these sorts of things have happened before, and they continue to happen. And they contacted the neighbors immediately next to where they were doing work, but not the neighbors who were, a few hundred feet away who could easily hear jackhammering at 10 p.m. at night. And, again, to highlight some of the ADA issues, on 28th Street, there was some work being done and which blocked the sidewalk, and neighbors were told to walk in the road for a while on 28th Street, where, last year there was more than one major collision per week on that street. They were asked to walk in the street. That was what they were told multiple times. I don't know how to respond to that. As far as and then there are the sidewalk vaults. We have some pictures of them I can share. I'll put them in the chat momentarily. But these raised sidewalk vaults that I've personally tripped on myself a couple times, and we have about a dozen or so in the 2.1 miles that is Remington. And I thank you for working on them and repairing them as should have been done in the first place to make them flush with the ground. But they just stick out, and they're difficult to navigate with a mobility device. They're difficult to walk on if you're not looking at your feet while you're walking. And again, they're not ADA compliant, and it was a tremendous frustration to have to ask to follow the law, a 37-year-old law. So those are a number of the frustrations we've had. I can go on, but I'll stop here. I'll put in the chat some of the images that a neighbor took of some of the ADA violations. They made a nice Google photo album of them, and a street poles being installed kind of improperly, some of the vaults later on, and some of the road issues in terms of rerouting the sidewalks. So this gives you a sense of what our experience has been with BGE for the past, for the 4 years I've worked in the neighborhood association. And I want to say, like, I think a lot of what I'm asking for, I think, is reasonable. Proper communication, following the law, and letting us know, especially, when something major is happening, or as Councilman Ramos pointed out, training their subcontractors on ADA, again, a 37-year-old law. I feel like what we're asking for is reasonable, and the frustration I hear from neighbors, and the frustration maybe you're hearing my voice, is that I feel like I shouldn't have to ask for these things, but here we are. So again, thank you everyone for hearing a bit of a voice from the neighborhood.
No, thank you for your testimony. And what I'll say, and as members of the council, we oftentimes get messages from constituents and folks in neighborhoods, but it's good to hear from folks directly in terms of how you're impacted. So that's very much appreciated. Also want to note that those who are in attendance, who are using computers, who want to speak, please use the raise your hand function so we can go to you. And I also know that Councilman Stokes had a question. So Councilman Stokes will go to you, and then we'll proceed with public testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm trying to eat, so that's why I'm on camera. But my question is, I know when BG&E do work, they identify that location, like on the ground, they spray paint their name, their business name, BG&E. Is there any way, I guess it's for Liam Davis, when there is going to be ADA work done, can that, if that same corner has BG&E initials, is there any way when ADA work is going to be done on some of those corners, can DOT or BG&E, whoever's going to be doing the work, or both, can they spray ADA, kind of give a more understand a sense of the community that that particular corner is going to be some ADA work going to be doing, particularly at that corner? Because I see it at BG&E, but I don't see it where they're doing ADA work, but you don't see that actually identified at all. So I don't know if that's for Liam Davis.
Sure, and thank you, Councilman. I'll say this, like, I think it's been echoed from some of the constituents here. It's definitely been echoed to me from you and your colleagues about how important ADA is. And it's a federal law that passed 30 years ago. So it's obviously very important. I'm not sure, if spray painting ADA is needed, because it's very clearly stated in federal law, and it's from 30 years ago. So if there are instances of ADA violations that your offices are aware of, I always welcome that feedback, and we can make sure it gets to the appropriate people in DOT. That's kind of how some of these issues being discussed today kind of spiraled into this committee hearing today. So, thank you, Councilman. We're definitely open to the feedback. I'd love to talk with you after the hearing to kind of talk this suggestion a little bit more, talk it in more detail without holding everyone else up.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for the question and the answer. Again, making sure that we are following the letter of the law and making sure that folks have access as they should. So again, I appreciate that. Want to jump back into public testimony. Again, please use the raise your hand function, and then we'll also go through the caller. So we'll go to who's next on the list.
Kim Lane. Kim Lane.
Oh, I'm sorry, I was just listening. I don't have my hand up, I don't think.
Your hand is raised. Okay, thank you.
Oh,
Kim Fletcher. Kim Fletcher. Hold on a moment.
Are you there? Sorry.
Yes, we're
Can you hear
here.
me? Sure. Hi. So this is Jack Fletcher. I'm the Vice President of Wyman Park Community Association. We recently had gas work in the intersection of 40th and Keswick Road, which was replacing their register. It's the old regulator that it's part of their infrastructure rebuild. So what I wanted to say was, that's necessary work. That's fine. The statements have been made over and over again about the lack of communication we suffered and all that. But basically, what I'm hearing here is everyone at the top, and I'm saying, all the different agencies as well as corporations and all know the policy. We all know what the rules are, et cetera. But there's a complete breakdown when it gets down to the actual work being done on the street. The people that are coming and doing the work on the street are just, they've been given their orders, they come, they do their job, but they have no clue about anything about, like, was there any report? Is there a traffic guideline or a control mechanism? Or is there anything like that? They don't have it. They come up, they show with their flagger force. They just go set out a standard procedure. They don't have a map. They do not have a control plan. They do not have anything that says this was what was agreed to. This is what we're supposed to do. And this is what we're following. I met with these people every single day that they were here, because we wanted to be a good liaison with them and have the best result that we could. And they were very cooperative. They were very, very helpful. They're very kind and very nice people. And they accommodated and made adjustments as we asked. But I don't see any plan that they were given to follow that was not evident. I'm just saying there's a complete breakdown between what is done in policy to follow it to get everything approved to then what actually happens when it goes to the street level to go get the work done. And I think that's it's that results in all the complaints that you're hearing. There's no recognition of ADA. There's no recognition of any requirement to be, whether it's traffic control or being considerate of the neighbors or what have you. There's a complete breakdown. So that's all I wanted to say. Council Ramos, thank you very much for your attention and help on the work that we've done. And Liam and everybody else, I know that we've been in conversations on other issues, and I want to say thank you for all the help that we do get. I mean, please don't think that we complain only. We greatly appreciate the cooperation and help that we get. And we just seek more of it and want to know how we can work together to resolve these problems. Okay, so thank you.
No, thank you for your testimony. Again, it looks like we need to have the most accurate information being shared with the community. And to your point, also making sure that, again, those standards are adhered to when the rubber hits the road, literally. Okay, we'll go to the next comment.
Jed Weeks.
Hi, thank you, Chairman Bullock, members of the committee, Councilman Ramos for having this. Before I get into my Baltimore testimony, because I'm testifying as Baltimore today, I just wanted to comment as a Remington resident also, just elevating what Fong said. By the nature of my job, I have constant communication with BGE. I have Ms. Donato Galindo's cell phone number. I know all the right people to get information, and yet still, a couple of weeks ago, BGE was in my alley doing a permanent restoration with no notice to me or my neighbor who's on the GRIA board or any of my other neighbors, which, trapped my neighbor's wife's car in their parking pad so she couldn't get to running the daycare she manages. So Bolton Hill Nursery was very sad that day. And they also managed to run a bulldozer into my fence and destroy it while they were in the alley. So, these are the types of things that are happening when sort of all eyes are on an agency or on a business. So I'm sure, if this is what's happening in Remington, a relatively privileged neighborhood with people with a lot of time to, be at hearings like this, you can only imagine what's happening, everywhere else in the city. So sorry, I'm going to move on to the Baltimore testimony here, and I'm just going to toss also in the chat just a little photo album here of some of the MOT issues that I'm talking about. So yeah, Jed Weeks, Policy Director at Baltimore, and not a day goes by without illegal detours on our sidewalks and on our separated bike lane and trail networks. Work that can and does unexpectedly force people walking and biking with their children into traffic, and work that is frequently violating ADA. And much of this work, in our experience, upon investigation and calling folks at DOT and BGE, is actually non-emergency work like pole replacements or other planned upgrades that are being improperly conducted under that blanket permit for emergency work that Tim Knight mentioned earlier. Frequently, the temporary patchwork on these projects also creates dangerous and long-lasting pavement conditions that can force a bicyclist or a scooter user to crash, or a mobility device user to become entrapped. And in the vast majority of these cases, the work is by BGE. So we are working with BGE leadership and their external affairs team, like Ms. Donato Galindo, on offering education opportunities for their staff to create safe and proper detours, notification of residents in the disability and bicycle advocacy community on planned work. But these are long-term solutions to an immediate crisis that needs immediate intervention. And to be frank, these long-term discussions tend to begin shortly after a public complaint and peter out until another visible critique like this hearing occurs. And then sort of on the DOT end, we're really encouraged to see DOT launch a revision to the street cut policy and have provided that will need to be incorporated to make that policy truly prioritize the safety of vulnerable road users. But DOT also needs more resources for enforcement and inspection. And as Councilman Dorsey mentioned, the scale of street cuts compared to violations is obviously mismatched. And the significant resources need to be dedicated to enforcement of that new street cut policy if we hope to see any change associated with it. And finally, we just encourage DOT to explore some more innovative pavement practices like pavers on sand that other countries use, so they can just pick them up and do the work and put the paver back rather than destroying permanent infrastructure during every street works or requiring interim patching. And those things come with the bonus of potential stormwater management opportunities. So I think there's some innovative ways we can address this as well with technology. So thank you for your time. If you have any questions, just let me know.
Thank you for your testimony, Jed, and also want to thank you for those pictures. You say a picture's worth 1,000 words, and so it kind of gives us a lot to consider and different parts of the city. So thank you for sharing that. All right, we'll go to, yeah, I'm sorry. Yes, please go ahead.
No, Gerald R.
Hi, good afternoon. It's Gerald Rutherford from the Patterson Park neighborhood. I appreciate the time you allowed me to talk today. I'll be very brief because most everything that I wanted to hit on was already spoken about. I'm calling more as a homeowner. You know, we've talked about all the outside that's going to happen, right? How their house will be protected, how they're getting fined. But what guarantees do I have the homeowner when they're drilling into my house to upgrade these meters? I've heard many stories of how the homeowners had to go behind BG and repair their own the damage caused by BGE. And I haven't heard of anybody that's received any kind of documentation of what BGE is going to come into their homes to do, what they need access to, and any SLAs for repairs that they will conduct from damages caused by BGE. I've tried calling BGE, but everything that they have is just to the public phone number to report an outage, and I've sat for probably a total of a couple hours on hold just trying to get past the right person, and I never do get past the right person. So long story short, what can we as homeowners expect to see that we know that our property is protected? And thank you for your time.
No, thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I can get his information, we'll follow up because that is an issue that we didn't discuss here at all today was the meter issue within homes. And then we can try to get him an answer. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
And this is Liam from DOT. I just wanted to say, you know, it is an interesting question. From the DOT perspective, like our purview is really limited to public right of way. So sounds like Councilman Ramos is taking it up, but you know, I also always recommend Public Service Commission as well as another avenue because BGE has to report to them. Thank you.
All right, thank you. We'll move on. Who's next to testify?
Diane Emerson.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks to Councilwoman Ramos for having this on the agenda today. I am the executive director for Waverly Main Street. So of course, a lot of our concerns is the communication piece with the business district and the business corridor. Along 32nd Street, we've had numerous work that has happened where businesses have not had access to their actual businesses, which therefore means they have to close and then they're losing profit, which is unfortunate, especially during this time where it is already difficult for businesses during the pandemic. Design for distancing work that has been ultimately destroyed, whether it was a mural that we had worked on last year that still has not been fixed because that was a big area after the mural was painted that BGE had to come back through and do additional work. That street actually had been closed off, so there was furniture and benches as a part of that design for distancing that ultimately we've lost funding for because now we have to replace a lot of that broken equipment. On 33rd along the median, we have a wayfinder sign where BGE equipment was also by that sign, where the sign has been broken and no one has been willing to assist us in fixing that sign. And then, you know, it's just our streetscapes that we're continuing to work on, where we had brand new sidewalks that DOT has put in that look beautiful, that have added to the Greenmount Avenue corridor that now have BGE markworks up and down these sidewalks, which now is going to be a permanent fixture until that starts to fade away. So the biggest piece for us is the communication so that we can work together collectively so that when we need to pause a project, we can, so that we're not wasting not only grant funding, but city funding and taxpayer funds. So that's really, really incredibly important to us as our businesses are trying to gain, you know, footing during the pandemic. So every little bit counts. Thank you.
No, thank you very much. And I'm glad that you lifted up the issues of business owners. I've heard from business owners in my district as well, who talked about the impact on their clients and being able to get there and be able to sustain their financial viability during this time period. So again, I thank you for raising that point. We'll go on to further testimony.
Caller number 7. Caller number 7, would you like to testify? No response. Irvin McDaniel, would you like to testify?
One, Irvin McDaniel. I'm a Baltimore City resident, and I'm also an employee of Baltimore Gas and Electric Company. So I was listening in and really appreciate the conversation. I'm glad that it was a conversation, an opportunity for our customers and our stakeholders to comment on the process. And we look forward to working with everyone going forward to improve our outreach and our engagement with the communities we serve.
All right, thank you. Next.
That's the last attendee who is has indicated that they want to testify.
All right. Well, again, thank you everyone for the testimony. Again, thank you, Councilwoman Ramos, for bringing this to the agenda. I know that there are still some issues that are ongoing that we still need to get some answers to. So if it pleases the committee, we can leave this one open at this point as we gather more information. Councilwoman Ramos, is that amenable to you?
Yes, Mr. Chair, thank you very much. I want to have the written responses from what was in the resolution, and then we can plan the next hearing for some of the specific things that came up that we need some follow-up on. So I would appreciate that time to have another hearing. Thank you.
Okay, so that being said, we'll move on to our third and final item on our agenda for today, which is City Council Bill 210162.
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry. I just wanted to thank you and my colleagues for indulging in that conversation. I think it's really important. So thank you so much.
Thank you. We'll always take those thanks. But again, it was a very vibrant conversation, and it's something that we all deal with in our district. So again, I'm happy to be able to do so. And so now on to our last bill, City Council Bill 210162, Urban Renewal, Brooklyn Curtis Bay Amendment. Again, for the purpose of amending the Urban Renewal Plan for Brooklyn Curtis Bay to extend the time for the Urban Renewal Plan for Brooklyn Curtis Bay remains in full force and effect, amending the URP for Brooklyn Curtis Bay to reauthorize acquisition of properties within the project area and to extend the life of the plan, waiving certain content and procedural requirements and making provisions for this ordinance severable, providing for the application of this ordinance in conjunction with certain other ordinances, and providing for a special effective date. This was introduced by Councilmember Porter. I know she's not able to be with us at this point, but we do also have our agency reports. We see the Law Department, Planning, Housing Community Development, CHAP, planning and also transportation along with Public Works and BDC. So definitely want to recognize our agencies and make sure they stand by their reports. So first we'll go to law.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is Vic Turvila. We stand by our report and we are prepared to approve the bill for form and legal sufficiency.
All right. Not seeing any questions from our colleagues. If there are any, please let me know as we go along. Next, we will go on to planning.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. We also stand by the report by the Planning Commission as well as the report issued by the Chat Commission. So unless there are any questions, that's pretty much our position moving forward.
Thank you so much. I do want to note that from law, looks like it's favorable with planning's amendment. So there is an amendment. So definitely want to keep that in mind as well. Okay.
And if I may, Councilman, just to
yes.
clarify and reiterate, the bills requested a 1-year extension. We're emphasizing and requesting a 2-year extension for the bill.
Thank you for that clarification. Sure. Really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right, we will be moving right along. So we've heard, Department of Housing and Community Development, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. Stephanie Murdoch, Legislative Liaison for DHCD. We stand by our bill report and support.
All right, thank you very much. Now we'll go to chat. There's no objection there.
Hi, Stacey Montgomery with CHAP, and as Kyle said, there's no objection from the CHAP staff. We stand by our report.
All right, thank you very much. DOT, looks like there's no objection. Any additional comments at this point?
Mr. Chair, we stand by our bill report. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Public Works, no objection.
Yes, Marcia Collins, representing Department of Public Works. Oh, I'm sorry. Put on my camera. Been a long day. We do stand by the report. We also endorse the recommendation for the amendment by the planning staff and planning commission in extending it for an additional year so the community has some opportunities to make the changes that they want to see. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Very much appreciated. Now we'll go to Baltimore Development Corporation, BDC.
Raven Thompson with Baltimore Development Corporation. We stand by our report in favor.
All right, so do want to ask, are there any members of the committee that have any questions for any of the agencies? I don't see any at this point. And I don't know if there's anyone from the public who wishes to testify at this moment. Do want to provide an opportunity as well.
Janet Evelyn would like to testify.
Yes, please go right ahead.
Janet Evelyn. Janet Evelyn, would you like to testify?
Very much.
Yes.
Sorry about that. I was unmuted, obviously. I am a Brooklyn resident and small business owner here in Brooklyn. I'm also the volunteer CEO of community nonprofit Action Baybrook. Our mission is to dramatically reduce problem properties, and we were recently awarded a large community catalyst grant to increase those efforts. Our second prong of our mission is to address blight. The third is to foster economic development, including workforce development. Encourage the council to extend the time the effective meaningful community involvement and necessary revisions, and to integrate the transform Baltimore zoning. The urban renewal plan has not been substantively amended for many years, and not at all, of course, since Transform Baltimore. The community has been working on revisions, but due in part to the pandemic, we've not been able to get as much community input as we'd like. We have a very low prevalence of Wi-Fi availability in our community, so social media tends to be ineffective for equitable. In fact, our first community event is planned for February 19th called Neighborhood Love with home-baked cookies and hot chocolate served outdoors. And we will be soliciting community input at that time. We want to modernize, to integrate zoning to make livable and encourage economic development. to reconsider and effectuate planned acquisition of properties within the business and commercial areas to allow equitable economic development. Project area in the urban renewal plan currently includes a multiple acre long-term homeless encampment directly adjacent to homes in our community. These homes are currently primarily owned by homeowners of color and occupied by tenants of color. Press an extension time for the urban renewal plan and effect and allow the acquisition of property development, extend the life of the plan, and other provisions requested in the bill. Allow us to have a reasonable time. Very much.
No, thank you. It's always good to hear the community perspective, but also to hear about a great community event. I wish I could attend that one. Maybe I'll try to sneak in. All right. Any other public testimony at this moment?
We have one caller on the line, Irvin McDaniel. I don't know if he would like to testify. Mr.
Nope, no
McDaniel?
comments. No, ma'am,
Okay.
just listening in. Thank you.
Okay, well, I think
And
that
that's it.
satisfies public testimony. Are there any last questions from members of the committee?
Mr. Chair, I just had a question. Was the amendment prepared, or are we just voting on it from the report?
Councilwoman Ramos, we are actually looking to extend it to allow staff sufficient time to make all of the necessary amendments.
No, I understand. I'm sorry, I wasn't clear. The the current bill says December 2022, and you wanted to extend it to December 2023, which was in the Planning Commission's report. But I was just wondering if that particular date change for another year is properly prepared by DLS, or DLR, or are we voting on it from the report and it'll be created for second reader?
It's my understanding we're voting it from the report, but go ahead, Jennifer. I'm sorry.
Yeah, the amendment was attached to the bill synopsis, which was sent out. So
Okay,
yes.
I'm sorry,
it
Ms.
was-
Coates, I missed it. Okay, so it's
Okay,
in
it's
your
at the end of
synopsis.
that report, at the synopsis. I'm sorry.
Well, perfect. Well, thank you for the question and for the answer. All right. So, given that we just had discussion about this amendment, is there a motion to move the amendment?
So moved.
So moved by Ramos. Is there a second? Okay, I'll go ahead and second that. Okay, let's see. In favor of the amendment, we'll go down the list. So I voted yes. Conway? Oh.
Mr. Chair, you can do A or nay.
Okay, so I said yay. Are you talking about collectively as a group? All in favor?
I think we can do
Yes,
that.
yes.
An amendment, we can do it as a body, but then the final, we would be
Right.
able to.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstain? All right. The amendment passes. Okay, so is there a motion to move the bill as amended?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Dorsey, second by Ramos. All right, so we're ready for the vote. Bullock, yes. Conway? Conway votes yes in the chat. Perfect. Dorsey?
Yes.
Glover?
Yes.
Ramos?
Yes.
And Stokes?
Yes.
All right. Looks like we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in favor, not opposed.
Six yays and one absence.
All
The
right.
bill's been voted for favorable as amended.
Okay. Well, look, that looks like it concludes our business for this afternoon. Again, thank you all for participating in this hearing. I know it went long in some cases, but I think we had a great discussion on these issues, and the last one was pretty efficient. So again, thank you all for your time today, and look forward to seeing you again soon. Take care. We stand adjourned.